Hey, welcome to part two of my video. I got interrupted while I was talking about some of the things that happened in the Campus for Human Development's storage building that was fire damage that we were working with. We had to go in there and take out all the things like food and clothing and effectively just throw them away, which was kind of disturbing to some of our trip participants naturally because it felt like maybe some of that could be saved and used, and with so much need, you kind of wondered why they weren't using it. But at the same time, you understood that safety concerns with those things. But I think it was also a difficult thing for the participants to understand that we were doing when we were going through that we were emptying out that building and throwing away what effectively were some of their, perhaps even their or their friends' stuff that had been kept in there, as well as some of the food that the campus had used to prepare for them, for the participants in their various programs. And so we did a lot of work with that, and we ended up taking those cubbies out completely and detaching them from each other and from the floor, which was some pretty interesting hard work. The majority of the hard work done by the students, I must admit. Some hard work with using crowbars and hammers and nails to get those things out of there that had been attached. And so there was a lot of strenuous labor, and I really wanted to thank the team that I worked with in that department for all the hard work that they did to get those out, because I know, like, starting out on the very first day of the trip, bright and early in the morning, with a crowbar taking out sections of a building can be a daunting task and a challenging task, and they just took it on as though it was the most important thing that they were doing. So I really appreciated them for that. Then we had to take those cubbies out and kind of wipe them down clean, get all the fire damage off of them, and then repaint them and put them back together and assemble them in another room. And so that's basically what we did. With my part of the group, there were others part of our 17. We naturally broke up into teams because, like I said, the Campus for Human Development and many of the agencies that are there in Nashville assisting with the homeless needs just can't handle a lot of volunteers, particularly on one task. So we did that, but some of the other participants also worked on cleaning up some of the shrubbery and trees and bushes that were growing along the property there at the Campus for Human Development. Also, we had people who were working to do some remodeling and repainting of the restrooms in the facility, which was definitely a challenging task for them. I can witness firsthand because the primer that they used to paint those bathrooms was very strong smelling, and I know that a lot of them had gotten actually almost ill feeling during different times of the day, just having to put up with those paint fumes all day long. So I really wanted to thank them for just enduring that and staying with that and not complaining about it very much at all. They just took it on, and I went in there. Every time I walked in there, they were just working right through it, and it was just really great to see the teamwork and the dedication that they had to making that improvement despite the discomfort that many of them were having to experience while they were doing that. So that was really great. As we finished up wrapping up that day, it was unfortunate because we didn't completely finish all the painting, which kind of left me feeling a little empty inside. I don't like to go work at a service site and not get everything accomplished. But I also understood that on Tuesday, the second part of our group that was led by Alex, the other trip coordinator, was going to be there, and I knew that they were going to finish up our work. So I thought about leaving it for them, but it was our time to go, and we wanted to make sure that we got a chance to hook back up with our group and get dinner before we headed back to the hotel for our first free night, which I know many people enjoyed by going to Opry Mills and the Opryland Hotel area. So that was how the first day went, basically. And then the first set of reflections came in that night, since that was the first night of reflections, and so I had to go through the process of reading those. And it was very awesome, actually, experience for me to read those reflections, because it was really interesting to see the various points of view that people had about the exact same situation. And it provided a lot of insight into the diversity of experiences that people had, not only because of what they were doing, but because of the way at which they were looking at it. And I was really appreciative of the honesty that was expressed in many of the reflections about some of the challenges that they saw, and the effectiveness of whether or not their volunteer work was in there, and the fact that they were breathing paint fumes all day. And just, it was really interesting to read those reflections, and I did that for quite some time. I got them posted for you guys to read, and I hope that you will take the time to go through and read many of these students' reflections or watch their videos, because some of the experiences that they had, individual students had, that other students had, are just amazing. Working one-on-one with participants and their programs to teach them skills for attaining their GED, individual conversations that they had with the various people about their past and why exactly they are taking advantage of the services now. at the campus or the National Rescue Mission, the story behind that, including like I didn't know that when I read some of the reflections that one of the stories that stuck out in the mind of some of our participants was of women that were fleeing domestic violence, and that's the reason that they were homeless. And that kind of stuck out on them because it wasn't necessarily something they were introduced to or thought of when they thought of homelessness. They just thought of people that had lost their jobs or other situations like that. And they didn't think about people who may be actually fleeing crimes, not that they committed that, but that would be committed against them. And so that was definitely an experience. And then also reflections about just like the people that are coming from substance abuse addictions and things like that that were just trying to overcome and to find faith and ways to believe in themselves to overcome those goals. So those are definitely reflections. So I hope you don't just view this one. I hope you view all of the reflections if you have the time to just skim through some of them. They're really great stories in there, and they're worth taking the time to go through. So I just wanted to plug that real quick before we moved on to talk about a little bit more of the week. It was a little frustrating reading the reflections because it took a little longer than I expected. Not necessarily reading the ones, but the processing of the videos, like what I'm doing right here. This one's not too bad because I'm recording myself and it's recording it onto YouTube right now live, so that's convenient for me. But for the other ones, we took flip cameras, and so we had to go through the process of processing those videos on slow internet and getting them published, and so we had a little bit of a delay in getting our videos published. As a matter of fact, I still haven't gotten them all published right now. So we're getting those up for you guys to watch because, again, those are some really amazing stories. But that was one of the main reasons why I am sitting here in the Bonner House doing my reflections right now. Is because by the time I got those done, I needed to get sleep because I was one of the drivers to make sure that I would be awake when we left. Sunday was a little bit of an easier day for us because many of the homeless agencies that we worked with, like I had difficulty even on Saturday finding agencies that were willing to do this because on the weekends most of the homeless agencies in Nashville are not offering any services or open, and so I know some people were kind of wondering why we didn't have more diversity in the experiences that we had on the trip, and that was part of the reason. Is it's just that we had a very large group that needed to work at these places, so we had to eliminate places that could only handle small groups of volunteers, and then we also had many of the agencies that just could not take our volunteers on Saturday or Sunday because that's their days off, which is understandable. Although you have to also wonder, homeless people have needs every day, and so why aren't they open on the weekends? You wonder that a little bit, but you understand at the same time that with budget concerns and staff concerns that they deserve a break just like anyone else too, and so it's difficult to do that. So on Sunday, basically because it was so difficult to get any bookings for our trip participants to work somewhere, we decided to take advantage of an exhibit at the Frist Center for the Visual Arts that was actually coordinated by one of the agencies that we weren't able to work with because, again, it was too small to facilitate our group, and that was the Safe Haven Family Shelter in Nashville, Tennessee. It's the only shelter in Metro Nashville that welcomes entire families to stay together. And you'll see a lot of reflections about that if you look at the reflections from the trip participants. That's something that stuck out in their minds was the fact that families were often separated because of the rules of the shelter relating to when women and men can be in the same facility. It's not very often, and then define men as a boy over 11 is a man. So it's interesting that a lot of times fathers and sons and mothers and sons are separated because of the various concerns there. So that was a challenge. So Safe Haven Family Shelter actually does welcome them in, and so we went to an art exhibit that they created for the Frist Center for the Visual Arts. And it was a chance. What they did is they took their clients that they had there at Safe Haven, and they gave them cameras, special cameras to go out and kind of document their lives. And they took a class kind of on photo storytelling. And so they went through that process, and they kind of just documented their lives, and they put poems and things and stories that they had written or had picked up from other places and kind of melded those together to tell their story about how each day. And I know it really stuck out in the minds of a lot of our participants because a lot of the people that were in these pictures were children, so they had to deal with the thought of homeless children, but also because they had to deal with the fact that they are children. Just because they're homeless doesn't mean they don't have the same dreams as everyone else. And I think that really stuck out in their mind. I know it stuck out in mine. And so that was definitely worth seeing there at the Frist Center. I know some people wish we were doing more hands-on work, but I definitely think that the witness that they got from that was worthwhile. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop this video because I'm about out of time.